I'm Encyclopedia Green. These days I'm like Willow Rosenberg unstuck from time, flitting between...
It's not Egyptian, it's Etruscan, mistaken for Egyptian by the design pattern, but any fool can see it predates their iconology.
But then I take one look at the world and suddenly...
I owe you pain.
You know, nerdy and furious, all the time.
And I think I'm kind of gay.
I cover academic esoteric here, topics that matter but are too abstruse and niche for people to connect with. I like to talk about science from an historical perspective. My video on eel biology has a Seamus Heaney poem. My video on crab morphology has several minutes about network theory. If you go looking hard enough, you can even find some subtle hints about my overall political leanings. This video will not be like that. The American Supreme Court abolished Roe v. Wade, and they're coming for the Civil Rights Act next. Like all petty dictators, they want to consolidate power first. So in the US, elected politicians can gerrymander their voting districts. That is, redraw them to split opposing voters and group their supporters in order to manufacture a majority. In 2019, the Supreme Court reviewed Rucho v. Common Cause and concluded that gerrymandering is, technically speaking, incompatible with democratic principles, but they're not going to do anything about it. In my opinion, it should be a federal crime to intentionally undermine our democracy, but whatever. Very soon, the court will review Moore v. Harper and probably rule in favor of gerrymandering again. Fossil fuel companies knew about climate change back in the 70s. They hid it. It's going to cost literally everyone, literally everything. And the people most responsible will never pay for their crimes. Their right to keep making unfathomable sums of money is more protected than your right to eat, to live in a home, or visit a doctor. We're facing Goliath, and David isn't here. Although, to be fair, he did text me. It said, vote harder. So David, this next part's for you. Listen up, look. Hey, I voted in every election I could. I don't believe that voting accomplishes nothing. If votes didn't matter, the court wouldn't be working so hard to legalize gerrymandering. But we don't elect the Supreme Court. And the people we do elect sat back and watched gormlessly for decades while this was all set up in advance. Is David and Goliath really the right metaphor here? I mean, I feel powerless. Everyone's in peril, but it's not really about the astonishing incompetence of anybody, let alone the American Democratic Party. It isn't a feel-good sports movie. The lesson of David and Goliath is that you should step up, not because you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and not because, what the hell else are you going to do, but because the cynical perspective is factually wrong. Goliath was counting on you not figuring that out, and David had a mountain deity on his side. Now, I'm not about to tell you things are okay. I respect that you're angry. I respect that you're sad. Most people have it worse than me, so I can't say anyone is overreacting. And I don't even want to say anyone's underreacting. I know that we care. I just think we don't know what to do. The left has been in this state of dull shock for decades now. There's no one cause for that. But I think there is a common theme. We stopped believing in utopianism. We used to set our sights on these impossible horizons and then fall short. And that's okay, because utopia isn't the goal. It's not a blueprint. It's anti-doomerism, a cynicism for the discerning. It was the missing piece for me. Maybe it can be for you too. This is David Sedaris' VHS copy of The Fellowship of the Ring. Didn't fit into his French VHS player. This documentary about pterosaurs once made me and my friend laugh so hard that she made me this shirt to commemorate the event. You get it. These are sentimental treasures. They're special to me. Except, I'm hoping this book can come to mean something for you as well. This is Outlines of an Historical View of the Progress of the Human Mind by Marie-Jean-Antoine Nicolas de Caratat, Marquis de Condorcet. It's fun to try things. Marie was hailed as the last witness of the Enlightenment. He played a vital role in the French Revolution. I had this copy, specially made at the Harvard bookstore, easily the hardest I've worked to get my hands on a book. And I never read it. These pages cover Marie's history of humanity from the Stone Age to 1794. They're better than you'd expect. We're skipping them. The last 43 is what we're interested in, where he describes a utopia, where everyone is equal, slavery and exploitation are distant memories, and science has led our species to flourish. It's written with this unshakable confidence, which is wild, because Marie didn't write it before the revolution. He didn't write it after while sitting on the new National Assembly surrounded by allies. He wrote it during the Reign of Terror, when his movement had turned against him. The revolutionary fervor had been almost completely co-opted by violent populist proto-fascists like Maximilien de Robespierre. Tyranny didn't really end up ending in France, it just sort of changed hands. Marie went into hiding for about a year, spent those last days writing this book. Now, I can't know this, but it seems kind of like he had made some peace with his fate, that he understood he was most likely going to die, and that his project had probably failed. He secretly consented to divorcing his wife, otherwise their home would have been seized when he was arrested. He also spent that last year writing a book of advice for his daughter. The contrast is unimaginable to me. The French Revolution ended feudalism. Ordinary people stood up to a king. The king backed down. Louis was executed later, but the initial coup was a kind of peaceful, sort of democratic exchange of power in a fucking feudal monarchy. Do I even need to say it? That's supposed to be impossible. Just before Marie died in prison, he wrote, "Nature has fixed no limits on our hopes." If you want to call the French Revolution a failure, I don't really care to argue. If you think this book is a failure as a history, I basically agree. If you think that makes Marie a failure, you're dead wrong. He very nearly succeeded at some impossible goals. He worked in the real world, kept his hopes fixed firmly beyond it, 2 feet in both places. That's utopianism at work. It allowed Marie to see the world for what it truly was in a way that gave him hope, instead of leading to despair. When people can do that, when we can face our problems head on without breaking down, that's when things can get better. What is utopianism, then? It's sort of easy, sort of hard to say. Some things are imaginary, but also palpably real, like art or ethics. They're not entirely one or the other. They exist and they don't. More than a label, less than a rock. Art, for example, is impossible to define because it's always in conversation with itself. The moment some snooty dipshit tries to limit what counts as art, subverting that expectation becomes charged with meaning. Recursive ideas have always been tough for me. I prefer to use language with precision. I like grouping things into categories. But there are times when categorization can improve our understanding, and times when it can only push us farther away. There are, 2 wolves inside of me. I'm not trying to be squirrely about what utopianism is. I'm just saying that the definition is sort of a small part of the idea. But in its raw, unrefined form, utopia is the world as it ought to be, and the longing for a better life that we all share. Like art, it's recursive. Utopia is rooted in changing the world for the better, so it changes with the world. I'm a pessimistic materialist by nature, but hopes and dreams are not immaterial things. In the words of Angelica Bammer, utopia is powerfully real. Hope and desire and even fantasies are real, never merely fantasy. It is a force that moves and shapes history. Some of these important forces include the meritocracy, the Protestant work ethic, inalienable human rights, civility, representational democracy, neoliberalism, traditional family values, feminism, individualism, social justice, American exceptionalism, and economic growth. They are neither imaginary nor tangible. They have components of both. Genuinely didn't notice that rhyme until just now. That's the material we're working with. We can refine it in a few ways. I've split it into 2 parallel currents of thought, literature and method. Literature came first, and it's still where most of the discourse happens, so we'll start there. The world as it ought to be isn't really one world, but many. We each have our own utopia, which grows and becomes more sophisticated as we do. If we share it, it can become literature. I'm not limiting myself here to books, or even really writing, but any language charged with meaning. A lot of utopian literature is satire of the idea, including the word itself. Utopia is literally a joke, mixing the Greek eutopos, meaning good place, and otopos, meaning no place. Plato's Republic is usually cited as the earliest piece of utopian literature. This is wrong in a way that is so unambiguous that it really shows how cloistered academia can get. In the negative 21st century, as distant from Plato as he is from us, there was a king called Gilgamesh. He ruled over Uruk the sheepfold in Sumer, today Iraq. Gilgamesh tormented his people, who cried out to the gods for relief, and the gods made Gilgamesh a friend, Enkidu, a wild man. Let him be equal to his stormy heart. Let them be a match for each other so that Uruk may find peace. The epic is very nearly humanity's oldest story, and it's a utopic dream where tyranny is defeated by the power of a decidedly homoerotic friendship. What I'm saying is that anime is real. Since those far-flung days from Moore, who coined the term, to Le Guin, who kind of sort of maybe wrote the best one, humanity never stopped writing these stories. Ian Banks's Culture series is my personal favorite. It takes place in a universe where utopias coexist with other civilizations. If you had the power, would you free a society of billions from chains? Or more properly, could you? I mean, is it even possible to free a person by force? Dystopias are counterintuitively generally utopian in character. They are utopias painted with negative space, like Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding, where it is up to you, Sam Porter Bridges, to save America and your sister, also named America. It's fragmentary, unabashedly saccharine, and defiantly strange. You spend a lot of time balancing briefcases on your back. It's full of characters like President Die Hard Man. You fight ghosts with weapons crafted from your own urine. It's not for everyone, but it warms my heart. In the words of Noah Caldwell-Gervais, the world is a confusing mess. Death Stranding's imagery may be odd and convoluted, but it's all got a purpose. The surreal in this case being used to make sense of an even more confusing real. Stories have a way of grounding us. Vincent van Gogh lived a tumultuous, tragically short life. He never really got the help he needed. But I think there are probably people alive today, in part, because they love his work and they know his story. That's powerfully real. So stories, yeah, they're imaginary, but that doesn't make them immaterial. At least not any more immaterial than you are, unless your mind has a way of escaping your body. But even if they were mere fiction, a lot of realities in our lives are fiction too. All of my life, people have told me who I can love, how I can live, and what sort of person I am permitted to be. Cruel and pointless barriers that concretely impact my everyday. I've kissed boys and worn dresses. I can tell you, empirically, the only consequence was having a wonderful time. All the evidence suggests that people are more moved by stories, by emotional appeals, than facts. Art can change the world. It was always coming to this. Atlas Shrugged is a difficult book to talk about. I will admit, it can be compelling when setting up its conflicts. But when it comes out and proposes solutions, its arguments are sinister and completely disconnected from anything like human values. It always feels like you've skipped a page and missed some vital connecting thought. Rand believed that selfishness was virtuous in and of itself. The book is so wrong, but delivered with such confidence. Reading it kind of dulls your senses and induces a bit of a panic, like waiting for life-changing surgery on some cold metal table. A nurse reassures you, this OR is the best doctors in the country. You're in safe hands. Or should I say, pause. And in trots a border collie wearing scrubs with a chainsaw grip between his gleeful, grinning teeth. Despite everything about its content and presentation, it's easily the most influential book here. That kind of proves my point. Utopia is useful. But it also undermines my point, because we can't really trust literature to be sensible or compassionate. Stories have no limits, so reading them can free us from that trapped doomer feeling, but they are incomplete without some way of distinguishing truth from falsity, and right from wrong. The primary source for this video is Utopia as Method by Ruth Levitas. She positions Utopia as a method rather than an idea, and therefore as a process, which is necessarily provisional, reflexive, and dialogic. It is always suspended between the present and the future, always under revision, at the meeting point of the darkness of the lived moment and the flickering light of a better world, for the moment accessible only through an active imagination. You may be able to tell by the florid turn that quote took that we are crossing a boundary together, not to the real, but to a forbidden realm between, the humanities, where the social sciences were imprisoned. There, do you see him? The leering tower guardian. His vigil began so long ago. Hark, he crows those solemn words. The social sciences are not scientific enough. People have literally been saying that since before sociology had a name. Under that pressure, sociology has strived, tried to be seen as objective, not driven by emotion or moral conviction, apolitical. Politics, after all, are built on the wobbly foundations of the human heart, so they cannot be trusted. People can believe anything. I mean, there are contradictions and unanswered questions in every field, but at least mathematicians try not to contradict one another. Not so the philosophers. They are all great and all in total disagreement. Are mental concepts innate or acquired? Innate, says the great Kant. Acquired, says the great Hume. Is there opposition between mind and matter? Yes, says Descartes. No, says Spinoza. Take your pick. And what about the material world around me? Why, it's all in the mind, Berkeley says. Or rather, the obvious solution, then, is to depend upon dispassionate, objective science, right? We can just study society, how it works, its development, causes, and history of injustices, and who's being harmed, and what we could do to help them, and we'll just not take any sides. Before I say anything more, I want to make one thing achingly clear. Science is the best tool ever devised for understanding how the world works. I'm not about to issue any caveats to that. But it is possible to be non-empirical without being anti-empirical. In fact, science depends on non-empirical methods. That's literally what a hypothesis is, a non-empirical claim you investigate empirically. Thought experiments, ideal hunches, and theories, they're all valid and useful and various degrees of empirical. And I do mean theory here in the formal sense, as in a model that is overwhelmingly supported by and exclusively concordant with all observed facts. Scientists don't have to be objective beings, which is good because they also can't be. It's an impossible standard to hold someone to. The only objective part of science are its direct methods. Data can be objective, but its interpretation can't be. To do science, in practice, you have to play politics. Good science will get ignored. Researchers will have unexamined prejudice. Most funding comes from governments and private enterprises. Degrees are easier to get for the wealthy and privileged, and good science is often activism when it's investigating a sacred truth. Look at scientific history, and you'll find endless examples of people who achieved great things without coming close to remaining objective. Carl Linnaeus was a creationist, and he invented taxonomy, which has developed into the best and most complete proof of evolutionary theory that exists, full stop. Philippus Aurelius Theophrastus Bombastus von Hohenheim, better known as Paracelsus, was kind of the first medical scientist. He used a mixture of principles, both empirical and mystical, to test medicine experimentally. He used the same methods to study tutelary gods like nymphs and elementals. STEM is not, and has never been, less political than studies of things like racism and poverty. Medical science is deeply connected to healthcare, insurance, and vaccines. Physics brought us the A-bomb. Eugenics was wildly popular among scientists for a reason. The most consistently successful arguments for it are the ones that appeal to science's reputation as objective and dispassionate. In this quote, Stephen Jay Gould is talking about biological determinism, the notion that your personality, skill set, and wealth, and even your social class are controlled by an immutable genetic destiny, or something imaginary, like race or gender. It's eugenics. What I'm saying is it's a new word for eugenics. Determinists have often invoked the traditional prestige of science as objective knowledge, free from social and political taint. They portray themselves as purveyors of harsh truth, and their opponents as sentimentalists, ideologues, and wishful thinkers. Since biological determinism possesses such evident utility for groups in power, one might be excused for suspecting that it also arises in a political context. Sorry, it's my foreshadowing crystal. I got it from my great-uncle Borgel. He says it can detect when something I say will come up again later. I mean, I remain unconvinced, but... Neoliberal economists are not apolitical. They're just mainstream. For all their blustering about the invisible hand of the free market, neoliberalism has always been a political theory of social reform. When governments enact policies based on its assumptions, values, and goals, it's not meaningfully different from a reform based on feminism or critical race theory, except that it would be worse. It doesn't become apolitical just because you ran a two-way ANOVA analysis with a Bonferroni adjustment. I ask you, what is the point of writing an economics paper where you pretend not to have any opinions? What do we gain as materialists from hiding our motivations and beliefs? It doesn't free us from bias, but it does give plausible deniability to bad science. We can't abandon entire fields of inquiry simply for being difficult to measure. Putting aside that we depend on art to stay sane and philosophy to make sense of the world, it's obviously fine to estimate the scientific consensus on topics where you lack expertise. Am I saying physics and sociology are the same? No, but the difference between them is one of degrees, not kind. As long as we're the ones doing science, and as long as there are problems to solve, it will always rest upon the same wobbly foundations as politics. Defining what is and is not true will always have utility for those in power. Hope will always have utility for the oppressed. I really don't see why people get so up in arms about all of this. Oh, geez! Ugh. If you don't spend much time reading political theory or involving yourself in beer-fueled arguments about the October Revolution, you might not realize how hot my takes are. Saying Utopia has never enjoyed a good reputation is like calling trans rights controversial. And I don't mean to imply that this bad reputation follows political lines. People with pretty much identical political goals to me are pretty likely to be outraged right now. So I suppose it is time to address some criticism directly. To do that, I need to narrow my scope to a few core positions. Critique the first. Perfection is an unreachable goal. Any theory-perfect society will fall far short in practice. This is uncontroversial and kind of irrelevant. Utopians are not talking about a perfect society or a blueprint for how to remake the world. Instead, utopia is something simple and profound. It's not an end goal, it's, a method. It depends upon checks and balances, it grows with time, it addresses some problems, but leaves others alone. There are stronger versions of this criticism. If we accept a goal that is far from perfect, but still ideal, will people be too selfish and short-sighted to sustain it? Now, I think people's character reflects their circumstances, that people can be a lot better when their needs are met and they aren't burdened under the constant threat of financial ruin. But even if I'm right about that, my utopic society still depends on a lot of cooperation and trust. One selfish actor wouldn't be able to tear the whole thing down, but a bunch of selfish people could do it by working together. If you want to know how lots of people making individually motivated choices can function like a coordinated effort toward a death spiral, you're in luck. Look outside. That's what neoliberal capitalism has already done. Except it did it on purpose. Capitalism depends upon and actively rewards selfishness. Its singular virtue is that it's supposedly largely self-organizing, but in a way that demands constant vigilance to limit how many people billionaires end up enslaving and how much poison they can get away with putting in our drinking water. Politics, utopian or otherwise, require constant revision, adaptation, compromise. Stay the course conservative economics and pandering liberal performance politics, they have cost, risks, and unforeseen complications as well. Basically, I haven't seen a good argument for pinning these problems onto utopia or the specific sorts of utopias I want to create. Critique the second. Imaginary utopias can only distract us. They're painkillers meant to mollify the working class. The left already spends way too much time sitting around. We can't, in good conscience, aim to do that more. There's this lefty word, praxis. It basically means actually doing something about it. People want easy solutions, though. We find comfort in incapacity. That is, we don't like feeling powerless, but it's relieving to feel like we're already doing everything we can. Arguing online, watching political YouTube videos, using canvas bags, watching political YouTube videos, most recycling practices, and definitely watching political YouTube videos, these things don't qualify as praxis. They're performance. I'm not sure they're best understood as flights of fancy, though. They feel good to us because they feel real. Our desire to help is genuine. We can't draw this dividing line between performance and praxis as if only one of them is good, because performance is one of the absolute best ways to spread an idea, to get people involved, and therefore to inspire praxis. Voting and protesting, they can be performative. More to the point, symbolic actions have political consequences all the time. Returning to my introduction, the Moore v. Harper case basically rests on a fringe interpretation of these 5 words from Article 2 of the Constitution. Our democracy could change forever, based on a debate of intent and meaning no more and no less real than whether a hot dog is a sandwich. That sucks, but it's happening. Dreams, symbols, performances, these are just necessary ingredients in political action. Before you can try to change the world, you have to imagine the world changing. Utopia may not have a built-in mechanism for realizing itself, but that's like pointing to the engine of a car and saying, how is it supposed to move? Try considering realism and utopianism, praxis and performance, facts and feelings as obverse, complementary methods, because they're good at different things. Realism is essential for us to adapt and grow. It makes it possible to decide under uncertainty, to distinguish truth from falsity. But it lacks some necessary ingredients of political change, namely an emotional appeal, a right of moral judgment, and a ground for action. All things utopianism delivers in spades. Utopias don't need to be real to be useful. They just need to sort of seem real. Critique the third. Alas, it is time to talk about the worst people in the world. If you'd like to skip talking about fascism, especially its consequences, and particularly if you understand why it's really, really silly to equate it to communism, skip ahead to this timecode. Okay, let's get into it. Is utopianism just totalitarianism in a Scooby-Doo mask? No. Obviously no. But as materialists, we can make some use of this part of the discourse. How our enemies use utopianism can be useful, and the differences are not subtle. Progressive utopias are provisional, revisable, and built to include everyone. They seek social and political justice, and they tend to blame problems on entrenched systemic factors. They make sense, basically. Conservative utopias are non-transformative. They're static. They don't imagine anything getting better, not because they don't care, or because they have values that are completely alien to ours, but because they believe things are the way they are for some good reason. Conservatives generally believe that every problem has an inviolable, unchanging, fundamentally simple solution, and that societal ills are mostly caused by a change from the norm. Progress is therefore basically innately undesirable, and the solution is usually the same: change everything back to whatever they perceive as the way it was before. Then there are the fascists. And I will give them this: even though all fascists verifiably smell like farts, they are very good at using utopianism to appeal to people who will then make the mistake of trusting them at their word. And that's why conservatives see fascism in a progressive light, and why progressives see fascism in a conservative one. Fascists, they don't believe in either. They don't believe in much of anything, just that they deserve power and authority. Mussolini said his party did not feel tied to any particular doctrinal form, but still promised universal suffrage, a minimum wage, union representation in the government, and violent redistribution of wealth. But if you look at what he did once he was in power, he didn't do those things. He mostly did the opposite of those things. The Nazis didn't actually overthrow the German government. The military coup in Prussia that ended democracy in Germany, that was orchestrated by Franz von Papen. He was an old-school conservative. He did it to bring back the monarchy. Hitler's first cabinet was 3 Nazis and 9 von Papen monarchist conservatives. And you can see why they felt safe collaborating with the murder everyone who disagrees with me party. But then the MEWDWEP did their murder thing, and I guess, who could have seen it coming? So the critics have exactly one thing right here. These are utopianism in action. They represent a vacuous utopia, though, a grift. You can see this most clearly in the fascist obsession with how things were better in the past. In what way, you ask? Oh, it's interesting, because I didn't even give you time to answer, but whatever you were about to say is what the fascists are promising you. Isn't that weird? Fascist history is prelapsarian. It never happened because its only purpose is to convince people to trust them, then give them power, which they will invariably use to make those people's lives much worse. This is a politically valid tactic for them because violence is their only solution to every problem. It's their only form of praxis. When the time comes to pay up, those who trusted them will find their promises were empty and their threats of force were not. Welcome back, Skip Buddies. In conclusion, utopianism isn't a good thing, innately. It's a complicated, useful thing. Bad people are driven by it, and by emotion, and not for nothing, calories. What matters isn't how fascists garner support, what they claim to believe, or how they present themselves. What matters is what they actually do. When you say these things out loud, they can sound a bit limp. I mean, did I really just take all that time to tell you, presumably an adult, that you should allow yourself to imagine the possibility of change? I did. And now I think I should clarify, I don't think people can't or won't imagine anymore. What I think is that people don't see a way out. People can fantasize about a better world and a better life, but really trying to think about a better world, it's painful. We haven't lost our ability to imagine. I'm not sure we can, but we have mostly given up on the firm links between imagining and real political change. Christy Moore sings, actually it feels wrong to have this in the shot for this part. Christy Moore sings, "For all our languages, we can't communicate. For all our native tongues, we're all natives here." In chemistry, a catalyst is a molecule that is part of a chemical reaction, but remains unchanged at the end. Instead, it enables the molecules around it to change, then sticks around for the next change, and the next. Utopianism isn't just imagining a possible future. To act utopically, you would imagine, be vitalized, interrogate your imagining, challenge it, propose it to those around you, invite critique, revise, stumble, revise again, fail, get back up. It isn't the imagining. It isn't the steps in between. It isn't the revolution yet to come, and it isn't just those things shoved together. Utopianism is a catalyst. My arguments today have been broad, so I am sorry if you were looking for practical advice. I do have some ideas, but I decided not to try to include any, not just for the sake of time. You know how you can help better than I do. You also are the only person who can choose to do something with your time. You have your own skills, experiences, and most importantly, a perspective I can't access. Together we could create something more imaginative and inclusive than either of us could alone. Capitalism has imposed so many incredibly complicated problems upon us, all at once. They all seem to intersect and amplify one another. It's no wonder people can't imagine an alternative, because it would be replacing something we can't imagine in the first place. It is entirely fine that you, personally, can't figure your way out of this, just as you, personally, can't hope to start a Fortune 500 company or overthrow a monarch. You, personally, can't do the work on your own anyway. You might feel small and powerless, but the fact is things got this way mostly without you, so you really know what happens if you keep your head down. You don't know what happens if you step out into the fray and try to help. I know that if you were able to get through your day a bit easier with time and emotional energy to spare, you would choose to do something really valuable with that time. Or rather, I trust you. I'm doing a utopianism. Thanks for joining me and watching to the end. Please tell me if this helped you, or if you have thoughts or critiques. If you want to support me, you could join my Patreon, patreon.com/Encyclopedia Green, or you can help me for free by sharing this video with someone. Thanks either way. If you're a reader, I've included my bibliography below. The works at the very top are my recommendations. If you want more videos, I can recommend Utopianism is Good, actually. It's more acerbic and incisive and goes much deeper into both history and theory. If you want to see utopianism in action, especially if you're an artist struggling to make something, check out The Kronk Effect. And I don't know, I'll see you in a better world.